We're going to get you ready for the start of the 2024 Locked On NFL Mock Draft. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers. I don't want to waste too much time getting into it today. I can't wait for you to see and hear our mock draft. So, as we sit here today, just a little more than a week away from the NFL draft, what are the biggest needs for the Green Bay Packers? Well, they need some insurance at the cornerback position. They have Jair Alexander. They like what they saw out of Carrington Valentine as a rookie, and they like Corey Ballentine as a fourth corner special teams kind of player. What do they have in Eric Stokes? That is a question that we do not have a good answer to at this moment, which means they need some Eric Stokes insurance. How aggressively do you want to pursue that? That is a crucial question for this team, because when Eric Stokes played, when Eric Stokes was healthy, especially as a rookie, now that is 3 years ago now, he looked like he was on a trajectory to be one of the best corners in the league. Certainly one of the best secondary corners in the league, which is a little confusing. One of the best cornerback twos in the league. A perfect pair with someone like Jair Alexander. And so for the Packers, they have to decide where they think Eric Stokes can go and how aggressively they need to pursue that position. They only have two linebackers that they want to play. Isaiah McDuffie and Quay Walker. They need linebackers. Now, where you want to pursue that in the draft, that's a tricky one, because history tells us, as I have harped on this show over and over and over, that you do not need to take a linebacker in the first round. And in fact, you would be unwise to take a linebacker in the first round, because doing so would likely overvalue your ability to evaluate talent. When you play the odds, play the historical odds, the hit rates, they say, save it. Save the linebacker pick for later in the draft, when there's less risk, when there's less downside, when there's less opportunity cost, because history says you're probably wrong, that you're probably just not going to hit on this pick at the same rate you would if your evaluation were a corner, a tackle, a receiver, or something else. So that makes this a little bit tricky. The same is true at safety. And there's really only one safety in this draft that is worth a first round pick. And that's only if you believe in a player like Cooper DeJean as a safety. If you think he's a corner, then the best safety is probably Javon Bullard, and he's a day two player. Someone I really like for the Packers, but he's a day two player. And so that's something that you have to consider here as well. Where are the guys that you can get if not the first round? Because you need a safety. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You need another safety. Right now, it is Xavier McKinney, Anthony Johnson Jr., and zilch and nada. How much do you want to prioritize that with value? Could you trade up? Does it make sense for you to trade up? I think it makes sense to trade up for Cooper DeJean if you view him as someone who could, for you, play boundary corner. If he's just a nickel, or he's just a safety who can play the nickel. And then look, there are guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick who are field tilters who can do that. Malcolm Jenkins was a really good player for a long time who was a safety who could also be your nickel corner. Those guys are really valuable in the league. I think Cooper DeJean can play outside corner. I think he can play outside corner for the Packers. But we heard Field Yates on our show last week say most teams see him as a safety. Well, so then you probably would be smart to wait. Unless you think he can play corner, which I happen to believe he can. Now, would you trade up? Could you take 25 and 58 and move into the teens to get that corner, that true, no doubt corner? Terrion Arnold, Quinion Mitchell, those are the two guys. I would consider it. I think the Packers will consider it. Now, there are some corners that you really like on day 2. Some second round guys that I really like. Some third round guys that I really like. Cam Hart and Kyrie Jackson and Max Melton, guys who are going to go on day 2. Drew Phillips, who I think are just really good players. And I think the Packers would find value in selecting them. But if you could move up with these extra draft picks that you have, then it makes sense to say, hey, we think this guy is special. We think this guy can change our team. Go up and get it. To me, if you're going to trade up, that's what you're going up to do. But I don't know that the upside is there, given what you have with Eric Stokes and given what you have with Carrington Valentine. I don't think moving up for a corner is the move for the Packers. Another need, maybe the last biggest need, is a tackle if we are to believe that Zach Tom is going to move to center at some point, whether it's this year or next year. And maybe this year if the Packers can find a tackle in this draft. And I really like the tackles in this draft. History tells us if you want to find a tackle, the place to do it is in the first round. Now, the Packers have 41, pick number 41, so that gives them a little bit of wiggle room. If someone they really like is there at 25, that's not a tackle, that's not any of the positions we've discussed. Let's say it's a pass rusher, an interior player. Someone like Johnny Newton, who doesn't have an athletic profile, but the tape, man, the tape is awesome. Then maybe they consider it, and because you have 41 to get Jordan Morgan or Kingsley Suamataia or Kieran Amagaji, that the Packers could consider something like that. There's also the problem with tackle in particular, and corner as well, that the teams right in front of them need some of the same stuff. The Steelers, they're probably looking at a corner and a tackle. The Eagles are probably looking at corners and tackles. The Cowboys, certainly looking at offensive linemen. So do you feel like you need to jump those guys, or do you feel like the roster is currently in a place where it doesn't really matter what you're looking for? There are some tackles that I would be excited for the Green Bay Packers to find in round 1. And I think it has to be the case that at either 25 or 41, you have to take that swing. Because it just, especially if you think Zach Tom's best position and you think that he can be an awesome center. And you have the backstop if you can't find the right guy at the right value at 25. But if you think moving Zach Tom to center improves your team that much, go get your right tackle. Whether that's at 25 or 41, go get that guy. There are guys to get. Amarius Mims would be a little out of character for the Packers. Doesn't have the experience. Much bigger than they tend to like. But they had him in for a visit. Tyler Guyton, taller than they've drafted basically ever. But also moves like no other players we've seen in recent history. In fact, in the last 5 years, Joe Alt is the only player to put together agilities at Tyler Guyton's size that are as good as Tyler Guyton put together. Guys who are 6'8", and he's 6'7.5", closer to 6'8", he's 6'7", 6. They should not be able to corner like he does. They should not be able to change direction like he does. And you see it when he's in pass protection. Guys like that should not move like that. He does. So some of these names at the top, Kool-Aid McKinstry, the corner, Cooper DeJean, corner safety, Tyler Guyton. If Byron Murphy falls a little bit, is there a pass rusher, Chop Robinson, that they could be looking at? There's some really good options for the Packers. All of them potentially make them better. If you are watching live right now, you will be sent to the debut of the 2024 Locked On NFL Mock Draft, presented by LinkedIn on our Locked On Sports Today 24/7 live streaming feed. If you are watching this after the fact, you'll be able to catch up on the episode, which player the Packers take with their first pick here on Locked On Packers on Thursday, April 18th. And you can get every episode of the 2024 Locked On NFL Mock Draft on Locked On NFL Draft on Thursday, April 18th, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.